What about meat? So we just showed some slides to show that meat has not been correlated in any study to be of increased risk. Okay, so the question is that what should we do with meat? Very tough question. And as we do all this research, sometimes you get really confused. Meat has been associated with heart disease in some studies. And what it is that it's not so much the fat that's in the meat, the saturated fats, but what happens is that the meat contains endotoxins, and depends on where you source your meat. If those endotoxins are in the meat, through saturated fat that's in the meat, it gets into your bloodstream. And when it gets into your bloodstream, it causes inflammation. So meat can be inflammatory if it has a lot of endotoxins in it. So that study came out, and that really bothered me. And I said that, my goodness, we shouldn't be eating meat because it's got all these endotoxins in it. But it depends also on the source of the meat. The second thing about the meat is today's meat contains a lot of omega-6 in it, because as I said before, they're all eating corn. Those cows are eating corn. They're not eating grass. So it's excessive amount of omega-6, and omega-6 is pro-inflammatory as well. So that's point number 2. Point number 3 is that the animal protein, particularly in beef, produces a thing called TMA in the gut. So what happens, the bacteria attack the protein of meat and then produce TMA. TMA then gets absorbed into the body and gets oxidized in the liver to TMAO, and that is inflammatory. And that's been also documented. So overall, there are studies to show that meat consumption is inflammatory. There is. So my advice to people in general today is, look, if you cannot, look, you know how hard it is to tell people to become vegetarians? It's extremely difficult to do that. But if you can hack it, eat as little meat as possible. But most people can't do that because they've been doing this for 50 years. So I tell them, okay, fine, you can still have your meat, but source it right. Make sure that you're not eating red meat more than twice a week, and make sure your portions are small, and make sure it's grass-finished so that there's more omega-3 in it and less omega-6 in it. And source it right, because endotoxin is going to be in it, and endotoxin does get into the bloodstream. And it's, by the way, endotoxin is what is carried also by the LDL molecules. That's why people who eat too much meat, they get small, dense LDL, because the LDL, in order to carry that endotoxin, knocks off a cholesterol, so the LDL particles become smaller. So they get smaller, dense LDL particles. That's also been documented. So look, when I first started this out, I was very much in favor of vegetarianism. The more I read about all this physiology, I realize that it's not so much the meat, it's also where the meat comes from, what the cow ate, endotoxins. So I'm not totally opposed to it right now. So I'll allow some meat intake, but it should be limited. It should be limited.